Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Juan Londoño, for those of you that are new. Today we're going to discuss when do we shoot color, when do we shoot black and white. 7 ways to help you make that decision. Many times as photographers, what we end up doing is we end up just basically walking around and taking pictures. Whether we're on vacation, whether we're in a big city just doing street photography, whether we're in gardens taking pictures of flowers, whatever it is, up in the mountains doing landscapes, on the beaches. And then we come home and we experiment. We say, you know, I wonder what that picture would look like in black and white, right? And we'll take all the colors away and see what happens. And there are many different ways of doing that. That's a whole nother topic, a whole nother video. But for now, let's keep it simple and let's just try to come up with an idea of how do we decide, besides just, flipping a coin, right? If a picture is going to look good in black and white, or if a picture is going to look better in color. If you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe, and if you're in the mood, buy me a coffee. Sometimes I drink it, like I did this morning. And sometimes I end up renting equipment to do reviews. I'm about to go upstairs and do a review after this video, which I will post probably in the following week. If you do so, thank you ahead of time for that wonderful gift. Now back to the video. So let's talk about reason number 1. We're going to keep this relatively short and relatively simple, right? Reason number 1 is the simplest of all, and it's because I want to. Nobody in the world can dispute when you turn a picture from color into black and white, they can't dispute it if it's what you want to do. There might be no other reason, right? We're going to look at 6 more reasons, and none of these might apply to you other than the fact that you felt like making it black and white. And as much as some people are going to hate this because they're not going to like the reason that, well, you're going to make it black and white just because you want to make it black and white. Yes, that's exactly why you make it black and white. Because the photographer feels like making it black and white. And if you come across a picture that you just want to make black and white, it doesn't matter if other people think it looks good. It doesn't matter if other people think you should have left it in color because it looked better. It doesn't matter. If you want to make it black and white, that is the only reason you will ever need. All right, we'll go on to some more complicated ones, right? But don't forget that one, it's very important. Number 2. If you want to focus on composition, sometimes it helps. Not always, but a good percentage of the time it helps if you remove extra distractions. And one of them is color, right? So say you have a picture that is working with leading lines, right? And you want to emphasize leading lines, right? Well, making sure that the picture is simple, like if you're on a beach and you have a railing and you're walking between 2 wooden fences, for example, that's a really simple picture, right? Even in color, it's not going to be very distracting, so the leading lines are going to be very powerful, especially if at the end of the leading lines there's a person walking, or if there's a sunrise or sunset, something, right? A boat in the ocean. So those leading lines are going to work well, even if it's color or if it's black and white, right? But the more distracting your picture becomes, right, with more things in it, then maybe removing some of that stuff helps, right? And you don't want to remove the stuff in the city or wherever you're walking, so you remove the color. It's the easiest thing, right? And all of a sudden, the leading lines, anything that you're doing for composition will sometimes stand out a little more if you remove the color. So that's reason number 2. But remember, it doesn't always have to be that way, right? So that's why we experiment. We see a picture, for example, you take a picture with leading lines and you like it and you wonder, I wonder if removing the color is going to pop the leading lines. Well, do it and see what happens, right? And it may turn out that it doesn't. So go back to color. And if it does, if all of a sudden the leading lines accentuate, then you go, wow, that made a big difference. And you do it. And the more you do stuff like this, the better you become ahead of time at deciding whether black and white is going to work. So you adapt this mentality. It's really a black and white way of thinking, right? And when you've been doing it for a long time, like I have, I can walk down a city, and I've done this with my friend Ferraz in New York City, We'll walk down the city and we'll both look at each other and say, this is going to be a beautiful black and white picture, because you just know, because you've experimented enough with black and white that you know that it's going to pop, right? So when you get to that point, it's a wonderful feeling. But even at this point, we make mistakes, right? And there are many times I've gotten to a point and said, this is going to be a beautiful black and white picture. And then I go ahead and I take it and it turns out it's not a great black and white picture, okay? So, oh well, I'm learning too, as well as everybody else is. Now we go into reason number 3, which is texture and detail, okay? Texture can be in color, it can be in black and white. And when you're showing detail, it can be in color and black and white. But there's something about removing the color that accentuates texture and detail, right? So, because when you're focused on just black and white and shades of gray, things look more detailed, even though you're not doing anything to the sharpness or grain or anything like that, right? Sometimes the color gets in the way of that. Detail, texture, same thing, right? It's not the same thing, but the same concept applies here, right? So if color is important, you don't want to remove it, right? You can still show detail, for example, with color in the photograph. And you can still show texture of something, whether it's cloth or a fence or the side of a building or brick or whatever, right? You can still show texture of walls, of fabrics, of whatever it is, of skin, right? Including the color. But you'll find, for example, if you did a close-up of your skin and you wanted to do hair follicles, pores, and little hair, and you showed it in color in black and white, you're going to see that it's going to pop out a little more in black and white, because that skin tone is going to be either black or white or some tone of gray. So now you're focused on the detail of whatever you're looking at, which is the pores and the hair, right? When color is there, we as human beings, we have this amazing ability not only to judge the picture because of the color we're seeing, but of just getting lost in the color because we're programmed to see color, right? It's a defense mechanism, right? We need to see fire, for example. We need to see when things are hot and cold because it's a life-preserving feature that we have, which is cool. I like it. But for artistic purposes, sometimes we remove that if we want to focus on texture and detail. Number 4, when we want to set the mood for something, sometimes, not always, sometimes we remove the color. When is that an example? Well, when we want to invoke like nostalgia, for example, like something that happened in the past, or we want to invoke sadness of some type, right? Somebody who's depressed, for example, and we take a picture, we remove the color because for some reason it triggers something in the mind, right? I think, I studied quite a bit of psychology and I don't remember this. One of the cool things about psychology is that they do studies about everything. And I vaguely remember something that when we're going through difficult times, it seems like we see things differently, right? We see things darker. So I may be living in a home. You can see the walls behind me are different colors, right? There's blue and there's red and there's yellow and this room I'm in is peach, right? That's about to change because apparently the new thing is to just paint everything a single color, but a light color, for example. But when we got the house, we painted it different colors. Now, if I'm happy, I see all these colors and they all look the way they look, right? But apparently if I'm depressed, things look darker. Colors seem muted, right? And I kind of understand that. There are different hormones flowing through the body. There's different things happening. So I can kind of understand that, which is why if I remove the color from a scene, that's why it works, that people see it as a nostalgic or a sad scene, right? Those are two different things. Nostalgic is taking you to the past, where things tended to be more muted anyway, right? You look at the first cars, Henry Ford said you can have any color you want as long as it's black, right? Because it was just, I don't know if they had figured out how to paint things in different colors, efficiently and cost effectively, right? So things have become definitely more colorful and vibrant as times have come along, right? So, but it seems to work. If you remove the color, things tend to look a little more nostalgic. You can take people back to the 60s and the 50s, and depending on how they're dressed, you can dress a model, for example, with clothing from the 50s, and then if you take the color off, bang, right? You're in that era because TVs in those days didn't have color. So you're automatically taking somebody to the past. And if you focus on somebody who's sitting holding their head, for example, and it's a really colorful environment, and you want to show that maybe they're not feeling very happy, maybe something's going on in their life that's negative, then you remove the color, right? For the reasons we just talked about. But remember, there are times where it's going to be important to leave the color. If you're trying to show maybe colors of some era, right, of the past, then you're going to leave the color, right? If you want to show, for example, the cars in the 70s had the funkiest colors, orange and green, right? All these bright yellows and just strange colors. If you're going to show that, then you got to show color. One thing to point out here, actually two things to point out is, don't forget that the news, the media, does the same thing, right? And it kind of sucks that they do that. They manipulate people, right? So if they're showing you a scene from another country and they want you to feel sad for a group of people, they'll mute the colors. And if they're showing you a scene from a different country and they're trying to focus or emphasize the celebration that's taking place, they'll up the colors, or they'll just show you a bunch of flags in different colors and just focus on color. So they manipulate what they're showing you, and that's one of the things that you can do with color in black and white. The other thing I wanted to point out as number 2 here is movies change color throughout. I don't know if you've ever paid attention to this. I know if you studied film and cinematography, you've probably seen this, right? A movie starts out and the character's doing really well and everything's colorful and the sun is out and the character goes out, gets in the car, and everything's vibrant. It's a sunny day, right? As the story progresses and the character starts going through difficult times, all of a sudden you see more indoor shots, you see darker shots, even the outdoor shots are muted, they're cloudy, more browns and grays and blues. And then towards the end of the movie, if the character starts coming out of that hole and they start doing better in life, you start to see the sun again. And you start to see the oranges and the reds, right? And it's very important, and the yellows. It's important that you pay attention to this. Grab a random movie that's done by a really, really well-known director, and you're going to see this, right? So check it out. It's something that film students study. You play with color because it means a lot. It invokes certain emotions. Number 5 is going to be timelessness. So what do we mean by timelessness? Well, basically, that there is no time associated with your photograph, which is why many times it's kind of the universal ageless kind of a tone is to remove color, right? If you look at many exhibits, for example, that photographers do, I've seen photographers exhibit in color, of course, and I've seen this in museums. It's very important, right? They captured what they see, what they saw. They're capturing what they see, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But many times museums will take it more seriously if a photographer has a bunch of black and white images. Now, why is that? Because if you can tell, so obviously we have many different tools for telling a story as photographers, right? We have the object that we're photographing, we have the color, we have texture, we have patterns, we have all these things. And if you can tell a powerful story with less things, then you're seen as more of a creator, right? So when you remove color from pictures, you're removing biases because some people judge things because of color. And you're saying that I'm able to instill some kind of effect or some kind of an emotion in you by removing color, right? So if I can show you a flower and you can go, oh, wow, that's beautiful, right? And I'm doing it without showing you color, that's more powerful than if I show you the flower with color, right? The flower with color is beautiful, but it's the way nature provided it. If I can remove the color and still move you, then that says a lot about me as a photographer. So black and white pictures tend to be better for exhibits. If I was going to go up to a gallery and I've never met the owner, what I'd want to do first is go through my black and white stuff and say, this is some of the work I've done. I would love to exhibit in your gallery, right? And depending on how they act and how they react, if, for example, they really take a liking to the work, then I will go and show them some of my color stuff, right? I wouldn't necessarily start with the color stuff because as gallery owners, they're probably used to seeing more black and white photographs than they are color photographs. But remember, everybody's different. So don't try to judge or assume that you know how people think, right? And I just kind of did that by saying show up with the black and white first. It's up to you really how you decide to promote your work. If you take more color work, you're going to want to promote your color work, and you may decide to start showing the color work. And depending on how they feel, you may go into the black and white later. It's up to us. The other thing is that when people are decorating their homes, I have color photographs. I have flowers in my bathroom, I have, right? But many people, many times don't want to struggle with finding a piece that matches the color of the living room, the kitchen, wherever they are in the house, bedroom, right? They might have a very interesting, unique color. In the bedroom, for example, they want a beautiful photograph, right? And they're having trouble finding a photograph they like that matches with that color. In that case, what do? You strip the color and you do a black and white. And black and white is going to work basically in any wall, right? It could clash with some things. It could clash with some furniture. It could clash with, if you have maybe too many colors or something like that. I don't know. You kind of have to put it up next to the, the place where you want to see it to kind of see if it works. Sometimes you can imagine it, especially if you already know what the picture is. You can go home, kind of close your eyes and imagine it in black and white. If that's what you saw, this black and white image. Imagine it in, in your dining room, for example. Right? I'm in the dining room right now. I have a big mirror in front of me, but I can imagine a black and white image there and it would work. This room is peach colored. So there are colors that would complement peach, and that would work too. But what if I go into a gallery and I am absolutely in love with for example, a photograph, and I envision it here, and I go, well, I don't know if it works in this peach room, right? I don't know. It has like a lime green, and maybe it doesn't work. Well, lime green probably would work with peach, but you know the point, right? Just a color that doesn't work with peach, and you can look at the circle, the wheel, the color wheel for complements and stuff like that to see what works. So, it might not work. You might ask the photographer at one point, can you make that black and white? I absolutely love this image of the boardwalk and whatever, but I want to see what it would look like in black and white because I would love to see it in my dining room, and this color pattern doesn't work. So keep in mind, sometimes if you're selling to the public, you might even want to offer the same image in color and black and white, even though it's not your preference to show it in black and white. Sometimes just giving people the option of hanging it up in black and white means a lot, right? I've taken so many pictures on beaches that are in black and white, and you would think, why would you do that? The sun is out, the sand, right? The waves, and there are so many colors to admire. Well, if you have a lot of things going on with boardwalks and wood and structures and patterns in the sand due to the waves and the wind, then presenting that picture in black and white might be the best thing you can do. What is number 6? Well, number 6 is bringing attention to light and shadows. If one of the most important things you want to show is a light pattern, shadow pattern, kind of contrast, the best thing might be to remove color. You see this a lot in street photography where there are strong shadows, right? And that's really when you talk about, light and shadows, really you're talking about the shadows, right? Light can be out everywhere. But if it's not creating or casting any shadows, sometimes the pictures look too flat or too bland, right? Too plain. So as street photographers, many times, we get up and we get out very early in the day, and then we like to shoot very late. When the sun is up, yeah, of course you can still capture wonderful stuff. I've captured most of my stuff when the sun is directly above me because I happen to be walking from 7 in the morning to like 8 p.m. and most of the sun is going to be on top of me, a good part of the day, right? So in the morning for a couple of hours, I may get an hour and a half in where the sun is really low and it's coming up and creating these amazing shadows. And then in the evening, I may get a couple of hours. But during the rest of the day, the sun's above me, right? But if I capture a shot where the shadows, right, are the main reason for the picture, then stripping the color might just make it a little more interesting. I don't want to beat that to death because it's a simple concept. Just remember, if you end up with a picture that has either, we talked about amazing patterns, right? Or just light playing with shadows, then sometimes taking the color away ups the contrast a little, right? And helps it look a little better. Number 7, and the last point here, and by the way, there are other things, right? I make these videos, I think of the top reasons, and sometimes I come up with, 15, and I don't want to do that if the video gets too long. So you talk about the top ones that I end up talking to my friends about when we meet for coffee and we're talking about going and shooting some street photography or doing some landscapes. These are the topics that come up the most, so I share them with you. Of course, there are other things. If you think one of them was really important and I should have mentioned it, just put it in the comments. I love to hear from you. So the other one, the 7th, is simplicity, right? Now, you can capture some really simple colors, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? We talked about that. You get to a beach, for example, and the sky is a light blue, not this heavily dark blue, and the ocean is a light green, and the sand is a light tan. It's all kind of muted in the sense of strong colors. It ends up looking like pastels, but that's pretty, right? And everything is kind of flat. So it's almost like you're approaching black and white, like you're approaching like a sepia, right? So in itself, that might work. But we're talking about when to go black and white here, right? So if you want simplicity, one of the things you do, we talked about this, is you take all the extra stuff from the picture away. And one of those things that's easiest to remove is always color, right? You can either tell your camera to go, black and white, or you can just remove the saturation. Keep in mind, there are a lot of different ways of creating simplicity, especially if you're creating the image, right? If, for example, you're setting up flowers at home, or you're setting up something, even if you're in a garden and you're shooting, you can kind of move some flowers out of the way. You can take, I've done this. You roll up a backdrop, right? And carry it. It could be cloth. It could be, like a cardboard, thick cardboard. And you put it behind some flowers. You get some flowers out of the way. When I go with my daughter, she can help me as a helping to, like a prop, moving things around a little bit without hurting the flowers. And you can create simplicity so many different ways, right? But sometimes we don't have that choice. If I'm doing a street photograph, I may not have the choice to decide what is in the picture and what is not in the picture, right? So one of the ways to make it a little more simple is just to remove color, especially if there are reds and blues and greens and there's a lot going on in the city. I like pictures like that. It shows the action of a city. It shows the energy of a city, the spunk, right? The spark. It's part of a city, right? And one of the reasons I love being in cities is it's all the visual stimulation, right? But you remove all that, and all of a sudden now you're focused on that person that's walking, that one car over here, the texture of the building, how many windows it has, right? The type of architecture. You're looking at different things. When the picture is all color, then your focus is on something else. That is basically it, right? Those are the 7 tips on how to decide if you're going to shoot in color or black and white, depending really on what you're looking for. And that's always the question the summary of this video is basically going to be, always ask yourself, I wrote it down here, what do I want this image to convey? And maybe you don't know when you're taking the picture. That's perfectly normal. I may take a photograph, come home, and I look at it on the computer and I go, you know what? There's enough pattern in here and there's enough light and shadow that this might be an interesting black and white, and it would kind of show the roughness of the city and that firescape with all the patterns and the light going through it. It would show the roughness of the city more than if I show the red of the bricks, right, that the firescape is attached to, and then the blue building next door. Now people are looking at the colors and they're less focused on the harshness of a city. Once I remove the color, it's that firescape with the lights going through it, the sun, and the shadows it creates on the building. Now it looks like a tough, cold picture of a city, right? And maybe that's what I want to portray. I'll be doing a video, and I was going to do it soon on how to think in black and white, but I decided I want to walk you through the experience. So what I'm going to end up doing is wearing like a GoPro and going out into New York City, and I'm going to look at different things to shoot and deciding with you, as you're with me coming along for this walk, how I decide if I'm going to present the picture in black and white or in color. Now, I shoot everything in color. Some people buy monochrome cameras like Leicas, and some people set their cameras to monochrome. In JPEG, you lose the color, but in RAW, the color is always preserved, right? A camera where you can just set it to monochrome. If you shoot in RAW, you can get all that color back, right? It's going to be there. It's going to be recorded. But in the JPEGs, it'll be monochrome. It'll be black and white. So I just shoot in color, right? And then I come home, and if I've already decided when I was shooting that it's going to be a black and white, I come home and I strip the color. And if I decide looking at the picture, I may look at the picture and go, you know what? This is a beautiful picture, but it doesn't really move me. Let me strip the color and see what happens. Ah, I thought so, right? This is what I want. So I'm going to do a video on how to think in black and white and how to see in black and white. And we'll go through a city like New York, because that's where I'm going to be headed next. And then we'll come up on different things. And I'll say, look, you see what's going on here? This may be a better color photo. And then we'll take it and we'll show both of them and we'll agree or disagree, right? If that worked. And then we'll see another scenario and say, this might be better in black and white. And we'll shoot it and I'll present you both copies on the computer, color and black and white. And we'll either agree or disagree, right? So I think it's a cool exercise. We're going to do it later, probably in the summer when I get to New York. I think I'm headed in July. So until then, you know what? Happy shooting. I hope you're doing well. I hope everything in your life is going okay. More than okay. I hope it's going fantastically well. And I want to wish you a wonderful day, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for your time. It's always greatly, greatly appreciated. From the bottom of my heart, I love you guys. I hope to see you in the next video. I keep covering the mic when I do that. I don't know if that sounded like an explosion. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you soon. Ciao for now.